Saint George was a soldier in the army of the Roman Emperor Diocletian. He was one of the emperor's favorite soldiers. Now, Diocletian, a pagan and a bitter enemy to the Christians, put to death every Christian he could find. George was a brave Christian, a real soldier of Christ. Without fear, he went to the emperor and sternly scolded him for being so cruel. Then he gave up his position in the Roman army. For this, he was tortured in many terrible ways and finally beheaded. So boldly daring and so cheerful was St. George in declaring his faith and in dying for it that Christians felt courage when they heard about it. Many songs and poems were written about this martyr. Soldiers especially have always been devoted to him. An event worthy of attention is St. George's fight against the dragon. This took place when he was stationed in the Roman army near Ceylon in Libya, North Africa. The dragon was placed outside the walls of the city, and no one could get in or out. The dragon had also eaten a lot of people around Ceylon. At that time, there was a young princess who was about to be sacrificed to the dragon. St. George then decided to kill the dragon on his white horse, and thousands of people were baptized into Christianity after the incident. He received no pay in cash, but instead he asked the king to maintain the churches and to help the poor. The story is very popular worldwide because of its spiritual significance of St. George defeating the devil through the cross and his righteousness in Christ. When I was born, my father consulted an astrologer about my life and future, just out of curiosity. The astrologer said I had to pray in particular to St. George. I wondered, how can a Hindu man understand the importance of a Christian saint? I realized that St. George must have been someone great since he was revered outside the Christian community. I started praying diligently to St. George because I had to deal with a lot of personal and inner battles throughout my life. I strongly believe that he helped me overcome many difficult problems in my life. We all have some dragon we have to conquer. It might be pride or anger or laziness or greediness or something else. Let us make sure we fight these dragons with God's help. Maybe then we can call ourselves the real soldiers of Christ. Georgis Margrigorios, or Padamila Tirmeni, is the greatest saint that the Malankara Orthodox Church has given birth to. Canonization of saints is not a usual practice in the Oriental Orthodox churches, and the fact that Padamila Tirmeni is the only canonized saint in the Malankara Church goes to prove how widely and spontaneously he was acclaimed as a saint during and after his relatively short span of earthly life. He died at Padamila on 2nd November 1902 and was canonized 45 years after his demise. The holiness of his disciplined life, humility, fasting and prayer, and the miracles that his presence or words formed were well acknowledged and appreciated by Christians and non-Christians of his time. Those who met him were deeply touched and impressed by his unassuming life and purity of conscience. His intercession has been effective to those who sought it during his life and even after his death. The number of people who placed their trust in his intercessory prayers has tremendously increased.
We all know how challenging life can be when we start a new life in a different place from where we were born and raised. It's even more challenging starting that new life with a new family. I had left my parents' home in India and moved to Kenya with my wife. Soon, we found out that we were going to become the parents of twins. We couldn't be happier. God is great. Our joy was short-lived, as my wife became terribly sick soon after. At first, I just attributed it to morning sickness, but her condition was worsening. She was throwing up all of the time, day and night. She was in and out of the hospital for 6 months. On the 6th month, the doctor told me that they would have to deliver the babies prematurely, so as to protect them from my wife's worsening condition. I had no choice but to agree to the surgery, though I had never been more scared in my life. They took my wife and my unborn children to the surgery room, and I waited outside. I wished I could do something more to help, but the only weapon I had on my side was prayer. So that's what I did. I prayed. After I prayed, I closed my eyes for what felt like only a few minutes to me, but had actually been an hour. I looked up at the surgery room door, and I saw something that startled me. In front of my eyes, I saw Paramala Tirmini standing in front of the surgery room. He looked at me and smiled. As I looked at him, I immediately became calm. I had this sudden feeling that everything was going to be all right. As I stood up, the image I had seen vanished, and the surgery room door swung open. On the other side, 2 nurses came out holding my 2 boys. I will never forget it, because it was the happiest moment of my life.
In God's saints, we will find sincere friends and strong helpers before God. Their prayers and friendship will bring us many extra helps from God's hands, helps which they have earned by their glorious generosity with God. In their love for God, we can see a wonderful example of continual self-giving to Him who deserves all that we can offer.